Oh. Unmute. Where the fuck is he? James?
I was muted. Okay. So, when we started recording it muted, didn't it?
Sorry.
All right. So, good evening. We'll trim this, but good evening, everybody. Welcome to our September chapter meeting virtually. One of the things I realized after our meeting last month was here I was trying to find folks who locally would want to present, and I didn't need to do that because we could do it virtually. And I reached out to a couple of colleagues, friends of mine, people I've known for years, and someone I've met on Twitter. Very impressed with them, and so I reached out to them and said, "Hey, you want to come present to our chapter?" And they were all thumbs up and real excited to do it. So I'm excited that we have Patrick Miller here tonight, and we have Trisha Howard here tonight, and they're going to talk to you about some very fun topics in the lines of communication when it comes to C-suite, but then also communicating with each other in this crazy pandemic paradise. And thanks to Patrick for the coining the phrase for me. So you can, I think everybody can see my screen. Hopefully we can. Yep. So I'm going to run through some announcements. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and then we will hear from Trisha. We'll hopefully try to get some Q&A in there as well. And then we'll call it a night, hopefully around 8:30 or so. Okay, so let's talk some announcements. First of all, got to thank Andy Jalbert with 8x8 for helping us out with this platform for us to be able to come to you this evening in your homes. They are voice communications and video conferencing platform. Andy, I know you're on the line. Why don't you just take a quick 30 seconds, say hello and introduce yourself and 8x8.
Hey guys, thanks for allowing 8x8 to host. As James said, we're a global unified communications and contact center company that puts security first. So appreciate you guys taking a chance and using our platform, and hopefully it's a good experience for you. Have a great night. I will be muting everyone, including myself now.
That's good. Is everybody seeing the menu, the agenda, or are you seeing a page full of icons?
We've got your agenda.
Oh, shoot. Okay. For whatever reason, it's not caught up. Let me kill it, reshare, and then see. All right. So now you got a page full of icons. So we're extremely appreciative of 8x8, but also our other sponsors that support the chapter. Folks like Bob Henderson from ISG. We've got Ron Frechette, Phil Turner from Gold Sky. The Intrado, CrowdStrike. I was trying to remember the other folks. ECPI University. Unfortunately, we haven't been back out to ECPI this year since February. Hopefully, in the new year, we'll be back out there to our places where we do our actual in-person presentations. But appreciative of the folks that help us out. So, if you've never been to one of the ISC Squared Central Florida meetings, either this is your first time because you're a new member or a guest, one of the things that we strive ourselves on is living up to the four pillars that you see here: connect, educate, inspire, and secure. And hopefully in tonight's meeting, you might be able to get all four. We're certainly knowing that you're getting the education aspect with what you're going to hear from Patrick and Trisha. That'll lead you to be inspired and work more to secure your environment. The connection part is kind of tricky. We're not in real life in our spaces where we've had events and having dinner and food and enjoying the company of others. But hopefully through the chat that we've got set up, you might be able to establish some connections, maybe even, get an opportunity to go for coffee with somebody afterward. Who knows? So to introduce the board, if you haven't guessed or we haven't met before, my name is James McQuiggan. I am the chapter president. I know on the call today we've got Walter Spielman, who's our vice president, Christopher Hickenell, who's our membership. He's the one that answers all your questions dealing with membership. Paul, who's our treasurer. Debbie, our secretary. Amy, who deals with our sponsorship. So if you'd like to sponsor the chapter, you can talk to Amy. And then we have Tom, who handles our education and outreach. I know the last several months it's been kind of sparse. You haven't had a lot of interaction with us, but I assure you, all of us behind the scenes are working to keep the chapter engaging and coming up with different ways. And we're still trying to come up with other ways that we can drive some interaction. Maybe we end up doing a meeting and we spread everybody out in a big room. I don't know. We're still working there and still figuring some things out. But I'm pretty confident we'll all be back together sometime soon. So upcoming events. So I only have 3 listed here. Pretty well, these are our virtual meetings we're going to do for the rest of the year. We'll have October next month. We have somebody lined up to speak. Hopefully going to have Patrick Craven from the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. They've had some new developments, some things going on. We're going to talk about some fundraising, hopefully with them. So we'll have Patrick here with us next month. November, that is the first night of ISC Squared Security Congress. So we will have an event that night. Hopefully maybe get some other folks that have attended Congress. Similar to what we did last year, but we'll see what happens. And then December 14th, we will have our final event for 2020. I did have a conversation with Ty Taft, who runs the SIM chapter, the Society of Information Managers. They are the one that put on the huge, awesome, fantastic holiday party at Ace Cafe. I reached out to him to find out the status of that. And of course, with everything going on, that has been put on the back burner till next year. They are probably going to do a small party. So I think I'm going to get with our board and kind of talk about, is there a way that we could do something that's safe, and where people would feel comfortable for just the ISC Squared chapter members. So we're going to bounce around some ideas. If anybody's got an idea for a holiday party on what we can do, send it your way, send us our way, and we will take it under consideration. But we don't know where we're going to be in a few months. We didn't know where we were going to be several months ago. So I think a lot of it's still up in the air, but we will certainly work to try and do some holiday event either in December, maybe do something in the new year. The other note is the meetings for 2021. The board will be getting together in October to discuss planning for next year as well. Of course, a lot of that is up in the air with what's going on with our crazy pandemic. But we will be meeting to talk about plans for next year. So we can at least try and have these meetings at least monthly for education and connection. So we're not the only game in town. We have ISSA, Central Florida chapter, that's led up by Patrick Heisinger. They have an event coming up October 9th, and that's with Peter Warmka, former CIA guy, does a lot of presentations on OSINT. You can go out to the Central Florida website, register for that event. For those of you that remember, Peter presented to our chapter back in, I believe it was January. Did a fantastic presentation for us. He's going to be presenting to ISSA. I know he registered for tonight's event. I don't know if he's on, but if you missed the opportunity to see him back in January, definitely go check it out on October 9th, where he'll be presenting. He did a great presentation for us. I know he's going to do the same for Central Florida for their ISSA chapter. ISACA, their events are kind of on hold. I haven't seen anything new, as is the Citrus set. So right now it's just ISSA and ISC Squared chapters coming to you in your homes to bring you the education every month. So hopefully as things start to get better, those events will kick back up as well. BSides Orlando. I know we had Ian on last month. He was busy tonight. I reached out to see if he could come on and talk about it. But BSides Orlando tickets are on sale. They do have a Discord channel that they're going to have for their 2-day event. One day will be all presentations, and then the other day is going to be workshops. And they've got some fantastic workshops going and planned. Right now, to attend, it's $30. You can do an online VIP, which comes with all other cool swag. If you are a student and you have a .edu email address, you can go for free. Don't get any swag, but you get to attend and listen to the presentations for free. So that's on the one day. But the workshops that they've got some really fantastic workshops. Again, these are going to be virtual. Software reversing, and then advanced software reversing, Burp Suite, which is web applications, Sunny Ware is running those. We've had Sunny present at our chapter and do a workshop for us. Fantastic. If you're interested in web application pen testing, Sunny is one of the Dr. Sunny Ware is one of the top folks in the industry when it comes to education and experience and knowledge. She's presented at Black Hat and DEF CON for us. Fantastic. Great opportunity, and the price you can't beat. There's some OSINT presentations, intro people, missing persons, totality from zero to Yara, and then intro to pawning web apps, and then threat hunting with Elastic Stack, and Vichy Little Liars. Aleth Dennis, if you get an opportunity to listen to her, fantastic when it comes to OSINT. She's the DEF CON 27, so last year's. She was the winner of the social engineering Capture the Flag. Very good at what she does. Her presentation, her workshop is completely worth it. I encourage you to go to that one. If you want to go to any of them, that would be one to go check out, especially after the recent Twitter hack. She talks a lot about the pretexting and phishing attacks, the voice social engineering over the phone, essentially. So very interesting. A lot of great workshops. So you can attend and listen to sessions on one day, and then the other workshops are on the other day as well. So I encourage you to check them out. The other thing BSides is doing, which is awesome, they are doing free sneak peeks, and they're on YouTube. I have the link here, but if you go onto YouTube and look up BSides URL, YouTube, you will come across the new one. You'll see tomorrow there's a Burp Suite workshop with Sunny. She's kind of doing an intro, a kickoff with that. Very worth checking out. And then you have Career Hacking Village on Wednesday. So very worthwhile to check out. All right. So can't talk about BSides if I don't talk about ISC Squared Security Congress, November 16th to the 18th. It's going virtual. It's through Bright Talk. You can register now. Early bird runs out at the end of this week. It's $295 if you're an ISC Squared certification member. If you're not a certification member, meaning you have a ISC Squared cert, it's $395. Again, this will be 3 days of presentations. We're going to do a meeting that Monday night. So a lot of good sessions that are coming out of it. One of the things that we're doing is we are sending members to Congress. We are going to cover the price of admission for you. We did a drawing last month for a member, and turns out they already registered. So we're going to select another person from that event. Actually, probably what we're going to do is select 2 people that attended last month, 2 people that attended this month. And we're still trying to see if we can make it so that we can pick 2 people from next month that can go, because with the early bird pricing, we've got to get the names in. So we're trying to see how we can finagle it. But 2 for last month, 2 from this month. We will contact you through email, let you know that you've been picked, and we will send you to ISC Squared Security Congress. So since we haven't been able to do a lot of other fun things, we figure we'd love to send to everybody, but we don't have the budget for it. So we will be picking 6, actually. We will do 2, 2, and 2. So stay tuned for more of that information. All right, 250 active members. Fantastic. Thank you very much. For those of you that recently signed up, I know we had, I think, like 12 new members sign up. So we're real excited that you're on board. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of the chapter. And we're up to 250. We're kind of up at the peak. I don't think we've ever been this high with members. So this is fantastic. We're real excited that you're a part of it. All right. I've done enough talking. So now at this point, I am very, very excited to have Patrick Miller here, who is the CISSP as well. He is a managing partner over at Archer International. Now, Archer International does a lot of consulting for securing power plants, energy facilities. But I saw Patrick's presentation a couple of years ago, and I think it applies to everybody when it comes to learning how to be able to talk to executive management and understanding risk. But Patrick, he's, as I said, managing partner at Archer, a company that he formed with a bunch of other folks several years ago, I think 5 or 6 years. He'll correct me here, I'm sure. But he started out at WEC. He was an auditor. So if anybody in the energy space dealt with NERC, Patrick was one of the early folks that were helping with those standards and requirements. And then he started up a nonprofit energy security group called EnergySec. He's the president emeritus. I probably butchered the word, but anyway. But the other cool thing that Patrick and I have really connected on is he is co-creator of one of the more interesting ISACs, Information Security Analyst Centers, and that would be the BSides. I'm sure he's going to talk about it in his presentation, but very interesting group. I think anybody can start a BSides. Patrick came up with the idea with Chris Sistrunk and ran with it, and it's been really cool. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Patrick. I'm going to bring up your presentation, Patrick. So if you want to unmute and say hello to everybody.
All right, I'm unmuted. How's my audio?
You sound good.
Fantastic.
Hang on a second here. And here we go. And of course, you'll just have to let me know when you want me to change your slides.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It'll probably be fairly obvious, but I'll let you know if you miss it.
Okay. Oh, okay. I got you.
All right. We're going to talk about risk management and executive communication. This is basically how we talk to executives in a very effective way. It can be challenging for many of us in the technical field. The more technical we are, this can be more challenging for those personality types. But we're going to try to give you some tips to make it a little bit easier. Next slide. So if you would like to succeed in communicating with executives, basically these are your bullets. You got to know yourself and you got to be honest with yourself, which for some people is very difficult. You need to be able to strip yourself of your ego and I guess look at yourself in ways that from the outside, more of an objective perspective instead of, you subjectively thinking about yourself. You do need to do research on your business. You can't guess. You need to know your business basically as well as your executives do. So this requires some work on your behalf. It's not just something you can step right into. It does take effort. Knowing your executives means understanding their personalities, looking at some of their past decisions, looking at their LinkedIn profile, trying to know as much as you possibly can about them, maybe using some of your OSINT skills without crossing a line, obviously. And then, of course, know the risks that matter to them, not you. This one is key. We all think we understand risk, and some of us can be very well schooled in risk management from a security perspective. You need to understand how the risks as they apply to the executives, and we'll talk about what those differences are coming up. Understand how to prioritize for business and not security. We'll talk about the difference between business and security, and yes, there's a lot of argument. You don't get one without the other. I understand that, but we'll at least highlight some of the places where the executives see things differently and why. We're going to learn some of the language that they use, which is key. Obviously, if you don't speak the language, it's going to be much harder for you to be understood. And then understand how to close the deal with executives. That's one of the harder parts. Next slide. Okay, first things first. Just get this out of the way, rip the Band-Aid off. Security doesn't matter. They don't give a crap. It's just reality. They do, but they don't, right? Executives, boards, C-levels, they just don't care. For them, think of it this way. This is like witchcraft and voodoo. This is, you might as well be throwing like sheep knuckle bones and chicken feet out there for them because they just don't get it. It's not something that you can teach them overnight. It's not like, they can basically think of it like they need a personal trainer. They're not going to lose, 100 pounds overnight. They're going to have to learn how to completely change their diet, learn a bunch of new machines and lifestyle changes. It's just not a light switch for them. It's very challenging for them to understand. So they see it as confusing, expensive, and restrictive, right? If they don't understand it, it costs them a lot of money, and you're just telling them no. So that's how they've seen it forever. Slightly changing, but not a lot in a lot of places. Air gaps, isolation, and similar myths still prevail. They still believe things like firewalls and passwords are going to protect them. Why? Because it was sold to them as it would. But the problem is that advice obviously has a shelf life. And as technologies change and threat tactics change and vulnerabilities change, that advice obviously got stale, but it's still stuck in their brains as that's effective. And it is, but it's only so effective, right? There's this common perception of, if it's never happened to me, why should I even worry about this? That you're going to have to somehow get them over the fact that, yes, you've never been hit by a car, but you should still look both ways. I lost the presentation. I see JH.
Okay,
we can still see it.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, okay.
All right. This is the way we've always done it. This one prevails pretty much everywhere across all management layers. We've done it this way forever, so this is the way we're going to continue to do it. Very dangerous mindset, but it's still quite a pervasive mindset. In a lot of cases, especially in things that are infrastructure based, they have insanely high operations costs. Just equipment alone can be outrageously expensive. So give you an idea, a transformer for an electric utility can run over anywhere from $2.5 to $5 million for one. Generation facilities, tens of millions of dollars. So the equipment costs in some cases can be extremely high, and this goes across the board for pretty much any of the infrastructure components. And of course, you get into things like banking and finance and healthcare, and there's insurance risks that get there as well. So there's other costs that can completely dwarf some of the things you're trying to do. And then how can security compete? Frankly, it can't, but risk can. But there's a difference between security, at least characterizing security and characterizing risk, and that's what we're going to work on. Next slide. Okay. I'm still seeing JH's.
James is having trouble hearing.
Okay. So whenever someone talks, I don't get to see the slide deck. Let me see if I can change my view.
If you click on a tile, it should pin it for you.
That's what I did. Thank you. All right. So let's look in the mirror and look at ourselves. Management never listens to their own staff. You're not going to change this. It's the way it is. You could be the best and brightest, and they're still going to go outside and have someone tell them the exact same thing you did, and they're going to pay a consultant 3 times as much. This isn't going to change. Okay. So you're going to have to just get through this and get over it, embrace it and work with it. You do need to lose the ego. I don't care how good you are, drop the ego. It's not going to get you anywhere in these forums. In fact, it's abrasive to them, and it feels as though you are, I guess, touting your knowledge in ways that is not useful to them. They want you to simplify it for them. And frankly, you're insignificant in their world. You may be a rock star in your world. You may be, you may have black hat and DEF CON degrees, certs, but all that stuff doesn't matter to them. They don't know this world. So these things just don't matter. Technical skills, I don't care how elite of a hacker you are. I don't care if you could replace us all with a single line of shellcode. They don't care. That stuff just doesn't matter to them. When you go in and talk about risk, again, they see it differently, and you need to be prepared to accept way more risk than you want to accept. And we'll talk about why. And then be prepared to repeat yourself with different words. You're probably going to have to say things in different ways more than once for them to finally understand it. And that's not a bad thing. That's just the nature of communication for things where the languages are different or you're completely different viewpoints to start with. And then soft skills are worth more than anything when communicating with executives. You need to have some, I guess, communication polish. And if you don't have that, work on it. There's classes, there's YouTube videos, there's workshops, there's all kinds of things. There's mentoring. Find a way to get better at your soft skills. This isn't something that you can go to like a SANS course and learn yet. But there's some that are close, but not fully there yet. But this is more important than any other skill you can have when you go in to talk to executives. Next slide. James, next slide. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Your business, know your business. As I mentioned, you need to do some research on your business. You may know your piece of the business, but understand what it does. The business age does matter because your board makeup and your executive makeup, their perspectives are flavored by the age of that business. Newer businesses, younger businesses, smaller businesses will have a tendency to be a bit more flexible, hungry. They'll have a different mindset than the older ones that can be quite stodgy. And you'll need to communicate, obviously, in a way that matches that age and that style of business. Look at your corporate governance. So how is basically, how's your organization structured? Is it investor owned? Is it private, for example? It doesn't have any investors, it's just private owners. Is it a municipality? Or are you even multinational? These are all some things to think about in terms of the types of dynamics that you need to factor in when you're talking to executives. And then, of course, your product diversity. Do you just do one thing? Or do you have some sort of vertical integration where you do you do multiple things? This can be like you've got some supply chain components, you've got some of the things we look at least from like I have a utility background. So do you do like gas and electricity, water and gas, transportation and gas or electric? If in any of those, do you do the sourcing of it, the transmission of it, and the distribution of it, for example? So do you have the source material where you make it, and then do you also distribute that, for example? So those are some things to think about in terms of the product diversity. This can mean a lot from the type of business coverage that you need to speak to. Next slide. Okay, now it's time to think like an executive. You got to put on your executive hat and think like they do for a minute. So put yourself in their shoes. You're likely good at business or you wouldn't be a C-level. You understand business. You understand how business works. You likely have a good track record at success in business. That's usually the case. You've transformed organizations or you've made organizations an enormous amount of money. Something like that has already put you in that seat. It's rare that you just have a founder that's got some unicorn idea and they get a ton of money or their idea takes off. Those are pretty rare instances. Most businesses have executives that have some fairly serious proven track record of success. So typically they know their stuff, right? You're not going to be able to come at them in a way that you know more than they do when it comes to their business. You'll know some things as an executive. They know some things well, but they're not deep everywhere, right? They're likely going to have a couple of spots where they're pretty deep. And that's usually what they've used to get kind of where they are. But they're pretty shallow in almost other places. And they have a tendency to lean on people that they trust in those areas where they're not deep. And they just kind of rely on those folks as their support. As an executive, once they've gained some ground, they're very unwilling to lose it. These are ongoing, regular turf battles for money, influence, power, you name it, within the business or within the marketplace, either way. But once they've gained something, they're very unwilling to lose it. It's going to be challenging to pull something out of their hands. Most of them, frankly, just don't care if people like them or their decisions. They really don't care. They're about making success and making the shareholder money at the end of the day, or whatever the business bottom line is. They don't like looking stupid or weak in front of their peers. That is one of the worst things. So if you say something that makes them look like a fool or like an idiot, you're immediately going to get set out of that meeting with basically, you might get a pink slip. Those can be career-generating events, resume-generating events in some cases. So be mindful of making them look embarrassed or stupid. That is not the right time or not the right place. Typically, the enablement of their good decisions that was your idea, but now it's their idea. That's the much better approach. So, as an executive, basically, you are a target. I don't care where you are in the organization. Somebody wants your seat. Somebody else is gunning for your position, so you have a target on your back at all points in time, and usually from all levels. Whether it's somebody above you that wants you gone, one of your peers that wants your spot, or somebody underneath you that wants your spot, you are constantly under pressure to perform, and you have a target on your back at all times. You have a very small circle of trust. You know who you know who you like, you know who you trust, and anybody else is untrusted or an outsider for all these reasons we've just listed above. And as mentioned earlier, basically at that level, you make a big enough mistake and you're fired. Yeah, you can probably get an executive job somewhere else because now you've got some history and some track record and likely some good references from someone. But either way, you may likely get fired for any one of your bad decisions that you make. So it's not like it's a cushy spot, right? So that's kind of their world. So let's talk about how executives speak. It's about risk. Everyone's seen this formula before, especially if you're in the certification space. Yes, risk equals probability times impact. That's a simplified form. Yes, we could look at ALE and some really long quantifications of risk. Reality is, at the end of the day, just simplify it to these for the discussion. Obviously, risk options: accept, mitigate, or transfer. They will likely want to accept most risk. That's how they are, right? So get used to it. Now, from an executive's perspective, their job is to make the organization money. As much money as possible without basically losing the company. That's their job. They're going to take far more risk than you want. Their job is not to be a good security citizen. Their job is to basically make as much money as possible, take as much risk as possible, and hopefully don't break the bank at the same time. So they're going to see this as no risk, no reward. So their degree of risk acceptance and their appetite for risk in a lot of cases is going to look very different than yours as a security practitioner. And then security is basically just one of the many risks in the all hazards view, and when you look at this in a much larger perspective. So next slide. Let's talk real quick about some risk types, and we're going to go through this from an executive perspective. This is bigger in like a chief risk officer perspective or a risk organization and not just a security professional mindset. So again, I have to think of a much bigger picture and open your mind on this one for a moment. So confidence, obviously, this is the confidence in your business or brand integrity. This can have some, market, shareholder, or customer level impacts. And in any case, the confidence in your organization goes a long way. This is one of the things that most organizations struggle to get, inches of, and any, issue, you immediately lose miles. So this one is hard earned. It's a key risk for a lot of them. Obviously, competitor advantage, needless to say, you want to have a greater advantage than your competitors in all kinds of various ways. Your credit rating, obviously, this one is key because it gives you your access to capital. You can't take on new ventures. You can't do things if your credit rating drops. Your stock price, for example, will drop if your credit rating drops. So it has a direct impact on your bottom line. Things like regulation, being a recovering regulator myself, I can tell you this is a very keen on most minds of most executives because it not only sets the tone with their customers, but it also lets like the board of directors see whether or not you're following the law, because obviously breaking the law is a bad idea. It can have serious impacts in a lot of ways, but not the least of which is things like safety, environmental security, et cetera. And additionally, from the regulation side, if you have a bad relationship with your regulator, some regulations allow for things like rate recovery. So you can get recovery or, I guess, incentives or harbor against the money you've spent to be compliant to a regulation can come back in various ways and various forms of incentives. So the regulator, you want to have a good relationship with the regulator so they don't end up causing that return on an equity to go south in some way. You want to make sure that you've got as many kind of regulatory chips as you can have on your side of the table, because there may come a day when you got to put that entire pile of chips on the table and light it on fire and hope that it works. That's a real thing in some cases to try to balance your regulatory obligations. Next slide. So some more loss, obviously, revenue, product downtime or outage. I know a lot of executives, I deal a lot with the OT side or the industrial control system side. So whether this is, I've seen mining, manufacturing, lots of manufacturing, of course, a lot of electricity, gas, oil, chemical, and most of the industrial space at least sees things. And I know that, for example, banking and finance does as well. They see things in production, basically an outage. They think of it in terms of dollars per minute and some in terms of dollars per second. That's how they see it. So loss can be quantified and has been quantified in some cases at that level. So their expectation is they'll know basically how much they've lost for any specific either large scale or component level production outage. And obviously things like human error, equipment failure factor into that. Human error is one of those things that they're trying to get rid of through whatever it might be in terms of controls and process. Equipment failure, they're looking at everything from mean time between failures for equipment, and then of course preventive maintenance, replacement schedules, and other things. And whether digital measurement to make sure you're actually getting what you thought you were getting out of performance. And then, of course, costs for loss control measures. So if you do have lost product, whether it is either stolen or counterfeited or whatever it might be, there's a whole range in terms of loss prevention. That costs money to prevent loss prevention, for loss control. And then all the administrative costs. So everything you're doing to manage and measure all of your loss, that has an administrative cost that goes with it as well. And then, of course, one that's near and dear, but wait, go back. Liability and insurance, also a form of loss. And you can have everything from increase in premium, lack of coverage, or exclusions are a big deal, especially with cybersecurity insurance. Insufficient coverage, you just didn't have coverage for it, or in just management of your claims. Think of things like single claims or small claims to all the way up to class action. The differences in cost can range widely. Next slide. So some more risk types. There's a lot of this. I'm trying to get this impressed upon you that this is not all, but a fair chunk, maybe half or more of what's on their mind in terms of the coverage of risk that they're responsible for the entire organization. Product and process, things like tariffs. You got to deal with everything in the tariff space because nothing happens without somebody making money on it in the middle of the process. Proprietary information, managing all of that, and things like all the way down to your supply chain endpoints and outputs. Workforce disruption, depending upon what kind of industry you're in, this can be a very significant issue. It can, break your business overnight, and it can be a very severe impact. And of course, things like automation. If you're going from a manual environment to an automated environment, the transition is enormously expensive, but then it obviously has some long tail of recovery on cost. But for workforce disruptions and automation can be key because what's left in terms of the human operators, the more you've automated, those human actions actually have a greater impact because once you've automated something that requires one human input, that one human input can break the entire automation chain behind it. So the human component within the automation space has a much, much, much greater impact the greater you've automated. Market, obviously, supply, demand, cost, those kind of things are key. And then, of course, purchasing trends. You need to be able to somehow factor your understanding of those and your prediction of those so that you don't lose your finger on that pulse. Next slide. So just a quick discussion on the risks, right? That's kind of some of the spectrum that they're thinking about at the end of the day, not just what your problem is. That's what's on their plate. And that's, like I said, that's a part of what's on their plate. So you're going to go in and you're going to talk to them about your issue, and you're going to try to ask for some money or some resources of some kind. How do you start? Do your homework, right? How does your problem fit into their risk framework? Look at maybe some of those things we just talked about and try to factor in how does it fit into any one of those, and try to attach it to some that have some, obviously some significant impact, or at least a breadth of, moderate impact across a bunch of them. Something you should have heard already is don't bring problems without solutions. You don't go in and complain about a problem without coming in with a solution. So you're going to need to think about the problem in a way like they would from their risk mindset and come at it with solutions that satisfy, obviously, accordingly to their risk mindset. And then again, have you thoroughly analyzed the business issue? Not how is this impacting security, but how is this impacting the business? What is this possibly costing you or could cost you in the event that, a range of maybe attack or exposure, right? Have you analyzed the root cause of the problem? In a lot of cases, believe it or not, we do analyze the symptoms very well. Root cause analysis is an entire discipline in and of itself, and can be done poorly or it can be done well. But if you don't understand the root cause of the issue, you're likely going to come off on unstable footing in the discussion. Make sure you get that nailed and dialed. What are the gaps, right? What do you know you're supposed to be at some particular area, but you're not there? What does that gap look like? It's typically something in the people, process, or technology space. These are easy buckets to categorize things. Most people can wrap their head around it without getting too detailed or esoteric. And then again, executives love precedent. What solutions have worked for similar companies in similar situations, in similar, if what's the closest match to what you've got? Doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer you can get it, the better. And then again, do you have proof? This isn't just some story you heard about. Is there a record of this? Because they're going to ask you to prove it. Really, that's the case, especially if you're trying to get them to make a decision that's difficult or costs a lot of money or under a short time frame. You'll need to prove that this was successful somewhere else. But they absolutely love that stuff. Don't use FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It doesn't work. They hate that stuff. Remember, you are a cost center, not a profit center. So if there's a way they can get rid of you, they would. Be mindful that's there. Don't make it worse than it is for yourself. Security already has a stigma, and you're going up against this perspective that security is confusing, expensive, and restrictive. Don't make it worse by talking about the cyber boogeyman. They already think that they're spending too much on security, and it only seems to increase every day. They're spending millions in a lot of cases. And why are they spending? The security budget has never gone down. It's always gone up. So if they're spending all of this money and there's still some, existential cyber terrorist threat for them, why am I spending all this money and nothing is getting any better? So try to stay away from things that are that extreme. Scaring them into action can definitely backfire on you. I've seen this in a lot of cases. And as I mentioned, if you're spending so much on security, why doesn't it work, right? And if the problem is bad enough, there is this perspective that like government will come in to help them. That may or may not be true depending upon what your organization does or the extent of the issue. But by and large, government won't come in to bail them out. But there is this pervasive mindset that they think that's the case. So you're up against that already, is that, if Russia is all up in our systems, then, the FBI will help us out. That's the perspective. Your mileage may vary on that, obviously, but that's how they think. And then, of course, stay away from stories about things like hackers, terrorists, nation states, organized crime, and other existential threats. Those things to them are so big that it seems like there is no solution for that. So why do anything? Okay. You got to talk about it in easy, bite-sized pieces that they can wrap their head around, and you give them little breadcrumbs from point A to point B on how this gets done over time through things like I mentioned, diet, changes in how you do things over time for security, because as we mentioned, it's not a light switch. Next slide. So let's talk about what to say. You want to say this instead of that. Executives don't speak IT, they don't speak OT, they don't speak T, they speak business. Don't say the word security. Just take it out of your vocabulary, ever. And they hate it. Not that they hate it, but it confuses them and it scares them and it makes them feel inferior. So don't talk about security. Rebrand security as risk reduction, right? You're not trying to, do all the security widgets or buy more security stuff or make their life harder or put more restrictions up in place. You're trying to reduce risk for the organization. You're trying to do things like improve reliability or business continuity. If your organization has had some reliability issues, ransomware, things like that, phishing, you're trying to just improve reliability of business process or business continuity. Things like loss prevention. You're trying to keep the organization from losing things like systems or data, whatever that might be. But even things like data loss prevention, that has a ring with them because they hear loss prevention in the title. Operational efficiency, they love this one, right? You're making this organization more efficient. You're doing things like introducing maybe non-repudiation or additional auditing or some controls. That's going to introduce workflow, and therefore there's less potential for human error. The system operates more efficiently. Things like that. But that's a security control. You just didn't call it security. You called it something else. Reduce downtime, recovery, enhancement. These are big things like maybe you want to virtualize. That's a good one for this one. Hey, ransomware came through. We've got good backups. We've got gold builds in our virtual space. We stand it all up and we just copy the files over and we're back on our feet. That kind of thing. Maybe it's cloud operations you'd like to move to or offsite situations. Don't talk about it from a security perspective or cite the particular body of knowledge section in your CISSP manual. No, talk about things like we're going to enhance our corporation's ability to recover as fast as possible. Process improvement, reduction of human error, talked about some of those already. Those are key things. They love to hear process improvement, that we're going to minimize errors, minimize failures. Those are key ones. Insurance coverage improvement or premium reduction. This is a good one. For example, if you would like fire insurance, typically a fire inspector comes through and looks at things like your fire exits. Where are your fire extinguishers located? Do you have any form of fire suppression? Do you have any sort of smoke alarms? What are they? That's the same thing with cybersecurity insurance. It's getting to the point where you need to demonstrate that you've done some degree of diligence, and then you get the insurance. Not only that, but the more diligence you've done, the lower your premiums are. The bigger your organization is, the larger risk you have, the lower premium you want. So think of it as another way to enhance that. And of course, anything from the aforementioned list of risks. And then speak of these risks in terms of gaps and strengths and maturity or growth. If you have a gap, talk about it more or less as something where you've got an area where the organization could mature a little bit more or grow in that space. Try to keep away from things like, any particular organization or section is failing. It ends up creating more enemies, and if you're trying to get something through the executive level, you need more executives on board without already souring the rest of the executive pool, other than the one you're asking, the particular executive. Next slide. Okay, so prioritization. This is key when you're trying to get your pitch across. Tactical, if you've got something that needs to happen right away, anything near term is going to be more difficult to sell. Budgets are typically already allocated for at least 1 to 3 to 5 years in some cases. So if you need an immediate budget knee-jerk reaction, that's going to be a much more difficult sell. These are going to be typically standalone little projects, and they've got a much steeper ramp. They're typically not budgeted, so those are harder. Strategic, they're less difficult to sell. They're easier to weave into some existing projects, that kind of thing. And they're a lot easier to get into future budgets. So if this is something you don't have to have done right away, think about possibly introducing it over time in possibly smaller pieces versus one massive shift level project. And then, of course, your priority is going to be based on the degree of impact of the organization. You know, if this is something that could have very severe and near-term impact, obviously you need to characterize that appropriately. Don't change the nature of the impact. That's not good. And then, of course, probability of occurrence. What's the likelihood this is going to happen within the potential time frame that you're looking at in terms of maybe budget cycles, that kind of thing. And then if you've got a cost model for payment or recovery, if you can manage to somehow look at what we're doing to implement this is actually going to decrease costs in other areas, then you've got an almost guaranteed win. You may be able to do even near-term projects because they're willing to release a little bit of extra budget now to get a longer-term return on things like efficiency or outages, downtime, process efficiency. Next slide. And then make it easy to understand. This is weird, but you're going to need to put on your marketing hat. Give it a catchy name, brand it, right? Don't just call it some security thing that's going to scare them and frighten them. Give it some catchy name with words that they can understand. Branding absolutely matters more than you think. You want a bumper sticker kind of thing for your project pitch. You want to do things like stoplight charts to show them in a picture format of where things are riskier and where things are not. Use simple things like red, yellow, green. They love stoplight stuff. You can even use, I've actually seen things that work like smiley face, frowny face, believe it or not, up arrow, down arrow. Just make it very easy for them to understand with very simple terms. Things like problem solution statement, that's a key. They love to see those kind of things. The risks, why does this need to happen? Again, characterize it in those terms we talked about earlier. Maturity, what's your organization's current capability to have this happen? Do you have, people, process, or technology gaps that are going to make it harder or easier for you to get this done? They love to hear areas where, hey, we've got a lot of expertise in this, but we don't have this tool, right? We're just missing this one thing. So characterize it like that to let them know where they already have something and where they don't. Obviously, cost, what's the cost, and then what is the potential for cost recovery, and then priority, tactical, or strategic. So on your preferably one page that you're trying to present your pitch, if you can capture these items, you're going to make it, you're going to have a much higher degree of success, period. Next slide. Close the deal. You're there to educate them on the risks and provide a range of solution options. This is basically how you get them to make a decision. Just getting the time in front of them is going to be very difficult. What's even harder is actually getting them to make a decision. Executives love to hit you with a ton of questions and send you off to go do some busy work and kind of kick the can down the road a little bit or a lot. So be prepared to try to minimize their potential to do that. And here's some tips to keep them from avoiding the decision, so to speak. So be prepared to educate them as much as possible. Know everything you can know about what you're talking about, the risks, the range of solutions, all of this. Come very well prepared and not in an antagonistic way, but in a helpful, I'm here to make you, or not make you, but here to help you understand this so you feel educated enough to make a decision now, right? Don't criticize or blame any person, business unit directly. If someone absolutely hosed up and it's their problem and it's their fault, don't point the finger at them. They're going to be your worst enemy and they may have better executive communication skills than you. So along the way, you don't want to have anybody with a knife in their back. You want to enable those people to grow. So you want to highlight this in a way that is, for example, we've got a lot of great things, but we need some improvements in this one area and we're ready to help them improve. We've got all these things laid out for their improvements and we're going to focus on them to make sure that they can get this right. So speak about it and think about it in terms of enabling them to grow or fix versus pointing the finger at them and highlighting all the problems that they've created. And then require a decision. Ask, say this, we would like to have a decision today or within a week. Give them an expected time frame. Typically day decisions don't happen, but if you've got like a quarterly meeting or a monthly meeting or a weekly meeting, whatever it might be, ask for a decision by the next meeting. And then again, no decision, let them know. No decision means that we're accepting these risks that I've identified by default. This one is key. If you don't get this point across, then they'll keep kicking the can down the road. So let them understand, explain to them, in a very polite way, we have to have a decision on this because everybody now is educated on these risks, understands these risks. And if you don't, I'm happy to help you understand them further. But if we do nothing, these risks will be accepted by default, just so that everyone understands. That's absolutely key. And then again, if they delay, then the risks may change because of the various risk factors, right? Recommend the best path, but be prepared with options. You never give like your best option up front. I like to pose 3 options. The top one is extreme and it's a throwaway because they're never going to take it. It's the best practice versus the common practice approach, right? Versus no practice or do nothing. So that's kind of just a ringer of a practice that you should pick up. They're going to obviously accept, mitigate, or transfer. One of those things, let them know that we've got these choices. We can do nothing. Just understand you accept those risks. We've got some recommendations on mitigation, or we can look at transferal with the third party or some legal coverage, maybe through security, cybersecurity insurance, or legal protection. They're likely going to want to shift the priority to act like this is a lower priority issue. So have your priority dialed. You need to know why this is a priority. Probabilities are difficult. So fully back that when you go in. And never, ever, 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 ever lose your temper. You should never let them see you bristle in any way. Your face should never turn red. You should not get frustrated, even if they're intentionally trying to frustrate you. You need to and balance your intensity. You should come across, frankly, in a way that I'm just here to educate you. It's up to you to do what you want. I'm just making sure you understand your risks. We've done all the research. We think this is the best approach to balance what we've got in terms of costs, time, budget, people, resources, maturity, and it's entirely up to you. I'm just making sure that you're aware of this. Understand, do nothing means we accept it. But if you come at it with a ton of passion, that has a tendency to put them back on their heels a bit. They don't like it. So kind of balance your approach and never, ever get angry. Next slide. Quick example. Problem is a lack of operational monitoring in industrial control systems assets, because that's my space. So I'm going to talk about things like in the OT world. On my solution, I'm going to call it visible operations. I wanted to have a moderately catchy name. And what this is going to be, the tagline for it is new tools and network designed for monitoring provides additional operational data and visibility. This is going to increase our system operational data and analysis capability. It's going to give us faster issue detection and root cause analysis. It's going to increase our uptime and lower our maintenance costs. Now, our cost is going to be low per network segment, and we're going to roll it out over time on a per network segment basis. Overall, it's got a high cost recovery potential based on these areas we mentioned above. Capability, we're pretty much there. We're already managing our networks fairly well. We've got a mature skill set. We know how to manage all this stuff. We're just got to work in these new detective capabilities and tools to give us the data to analyze. And risk, it's relatively low. We're already close to our current system and network model. We're not asking for some significant changes to the network at all. It's going to take minimal hardware, minimal software, and minimal training. And then I can work this in over time, and we're going to add it with capital improvements. As new things get brought in, they must come in with these new capabilities enhanced. And then we're going to look at where maybe where changes happen or significant changes happen to other networks. We're going to add it in there. That is an example of a quick kind of digest or summarized pitch that you want to go through. I didn't mention security once, but what we're getting in there is a bunch of industrial control system monitoring tools and new skill sets and possibly some things to add to our SOC if we have one. Next slide. Summary, almost done. Executives don't care about security, but they do care about making and losing money. If you think about the problem like they do about making and losing money, you'll have a much better success rate with them. Do your homework, be prepared, speak their language. Any part of this that you come in unprepared, you are likely they'll find it. It's like they have a nose for it. And once there's blood in the water, it becomes like a shark feeding frenzy. Just know everything you possibly can before you go in. Do your homework. Don't bring a problem without solutions. I can't harp on this enough. You should always have good, solid solutions and a range of them, not just one. Make your message easy for them to understand. Speak on their terms. And again, you're there to help them decide. That their decision is likely going to be one you don't like. It's going to probably take on a lot more risk than you want. But that's what your job is. Your job is not to frankly, to secure everything. Your job is to secure the company enough to where their expectations are managed. And then that's the main thing. You've got to enable them to make and keep more money. At the end of the day, that's your job. It's not to say no. It's not to block everything. It's going to be to enable them to take as much risk as they can without losing the company. That's a tough thing to swallow, but it's the truth from an executive perspective. Next slide. I think we're done. Okay, there's my contact info if you would like to reach me anytime. I'm pretty easy to find. Any questions or any feedback?
Great presentation. I know James is going to log in here shortly. He was having some audio issues. So any questions on the chat that anyone wants to submit? Just agreeing it was a great presentation. So with that, James asked me to turn it over to you, Tricia. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and present, that would be fantastic. So thank you, Patrick.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. That was awesome. And ties very well in with what I'm going to be talking about. So that is awesome. Let me see if I can get sharing here. I seem to have lost the ability to share my PowerPoint. Let's see. There it is. I had to wake it up. All right. Can everybody see the presentation and me, or only the presentation? What's the situation here?
Currently just the presentation.
Okay, cool. All right. So, hi everybody. My name is Tricia Howard, aka Tricia Kicks SaaS online. I am a marketing manager at Holistic Cyber. We focus on the nation state threat for the enterprise. I was laughing a little bit at some of Patrick's stuff because a lot of what he was talking about on the nation state stuff hit really close to home for what we talk about with our customers. So it was really good. And I'm going to be talking today about social media and networking like a human, because obviously we are in virtual events for the foreseeable future. So being able to really utilize social media and digital networking is a really important skill to have, especially this year. All right. So hello. Work for me. There we go. So a little background and a journey to the past for those of you theater nerds. I actually come from a theater background. I was not a technical person to begin with, so this is not going to be a technical heavy presentation. I came from the acting world, and of course, things did not quite work out the way that I thought they were going to. I was going to jump into the MFA for lighting design world, and that was not in the cards for me, at least not at this point. So I made the jump up to move halfway across the country and jumped into technology entirely on accident. So now I work here, like I mentioned, at Holistic Cyber. I spent most of my career in sales, and recently, within the last year, I've moved into marketing. And what I do here at Holistic Cyber is everything digital comes through me. Social media, any sort of content. I create a lot of content, whether it be for work or otherwise. Still do a lot of the theater stuff, mostly stand-up comedy now, whenever I'm not working or protecting my little dog Darth there. And that really cute little candid of me in the bottom left corner is from my newest series, dramatically reading called Sales Emails. And if you've seen any of the Explainer series, you'll notice some common themes, because a lot of the issues that we have with quote unquote social selling back in the day, is what it was called. It's still called that. I hate it. Is the same things that people, the same faux pas, if you will, that people make when talking about digital networking. So here we go. So the reason that I bring all of that up is because my entire life has been centered around communication. An artist's entire job is to communicate, whether it means literally for an actor to be saying their lines, whether it is a visual artist who is trying to communicate something about themselves or how they see the world. Our entire job is to communicate, and even post collegiate, it's been the same way. As a matter of fact, I started in inside sales, the whole smile and dial cold call life. And let me just tell you something. The only people who hate cold calls more than the people get them are the ones making them. I couldn't stand it. It was, 75 plus cold calls a day, getting told all kinds of lovely things depending on the mood that the people were in that I was talking to. And I decided I wanted to do something different. So I started creating content around security, particularly blogging is where I spent most of the time, and then moved more into podcasting and video. But my main idea was I am sick and tired of being caller number 8 million to somebody who doesn't want to talk to me to begin with. How can I bring this in a different way? And it was whenever people weren't really doing social selling, and they still don't do it very well, to be honest. So why is that? People suck at text-based communication. It just doesn't come native to some people. And it's interesting because we live in this world where we're entirely text-based, especially right now. A lot of texting, a lot of IM, a lot of, social media, of course, but we're still not super great at it. And the reason is because we've created this idea that digital communication, especially text-based, is super different than in-person communication. And this might be a hot take, but it really isn't that different, or it doesn't have to be. It is right now because people look at it so differently. Of course, there are things that you miss in text-based communication. For instance, you miss any sort of inflection. This screen grab actually is from one of my favorite Key and Peele skits, where they are texting each other, and one of them is responding like, yeah, whatever, it's cool. And the other one is getting it like, he said whatever to me? Are you kidding me? Right? So that is the one thing that is a little annoying, if you will, when we're talking about text-based communication, is that you are entirely dependent on the person receiving it, what mood they're in, what biases they may have, depending on what words may trigger them, etc. And you don't have any sort of inflection to defeat that. So we fix it by doing GIFs and emojis or emoticons back in the day, my goodness. But largely, we're just not that great at it. So we can fix it though. I'm going to be focusing primarily on LinkedIn today. I was really happy that there was that little bitty plug in for talking about the OSINT stuff on LinkedIn with the executives, because that's what we're going to be focusing on mostly today. And this seems like a really, really simple question. But the truth is, LinkedIn looks very different to some people, to a lot of people. So I'm going to start on what is LinkedIn by saying what it is not. So it is not a resume regurgitator. Say that again. It is not a resume regurgitator. Unfortunately, a lot of people look at it that way, but it really is not. It's not a billboard. It's not, unless you are in digital marketing and you are handling actual paid campaign for your company. It is not a billboard for yourself or your company. It is not a dating site. I'm not going to say anything else on that. You can figure that out yourself. And the last one is in a different color X, because it is this way right now, but it doesn't have to be. And that's lame. LinkedIn is kind of lame. And the problem with that is that there is actually a lot of good that can come out of LinkedIn, especially on a networking perspective in this field and with executives, as was being discussed before. What's the answer? It is a social media site. That is exactly what LinkedIn is. So why don't we treat it like one? And the truth is, the reason we don't treat LinkedIn like a social media site, or most of us don't, is because they're the rules. Whenever different social media companies came out, different platforms came out, based on the way the platform was built, based on the type of people that were drawn to the different platform, we created these unspoken rules. Sometimes they are spoken, but mostly unspoken rules of what was acceptable on each platform. So let's take two, for instance, ding, 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 Twitter versus LinkedIn. So I'm a huge Twitter fan, I'm a big Twitter user. And I wanted to bring them Twitter in specifically because I think it's one of the best examples or a nice antithetical to something like LinkedIn. So when Twitter came out, it was kind of revolutionary in a lot of ways. It was a way that it was very short, right? Everything else was definitely more on the blog side, you know, the Xangas, the MySpaces, et cetera. They were geared more towards you getting all of your thoughts out. And Twitter was much more quippy. It was intended to be fast, and it was intended to have conversations. So people tended to post on it more, and this was brilliant on Twitter's part because social media sites, of course, they are ad revenue driven. So the more people that they have on their platform, and the more time that people on average stay on the platform, and the more active daily users, the more they can charge for ads. So they were using all these metrics. They did a really, really good job. But the biggest thing that Twitter did was it allowed this personal opening to celebrities, to people that were out of reach for us normies, if you will, to be able to connect on a level that we hadn't really seen too terribly much before, because this was, of course, before brands started taking over all of social media and it was all just people. But all of those things come in to say that Twitter ended up lending itself towards a more personal engagement style. And while, yes, that is not always good, I'm in InfoSec Twitter as well, I see the drama, but it does end up being more personal. So you end up having better conversations on Twitter than largely you would on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn, you know, same concept applies. They were awesome because they offered like the Facebook of professional networking, which was something that was missing at the time. We had social media, we kind of knew what it was, but an opportunity for us to have a global reach from a work specific perspective. And while it was brilliant marketing for LinkedIn at the time, and it was a great idea, we've never really gone out of that. So LinkedIn has become it still is the quote professional network. And I am using air quotes, and I use quotes on professional as well, because I personally cannot stand this whole ideology that we have created around being quote unquote professional. I think if this year has shown us anything, it is that it doesn't matter what color your hair is, and it doesn't matter what you're wearing, as long as you're getting your job done, everything is cool. But the way that the algorithm works on LinkedIn is very, very different than the way Twitter works. Now, Twitter has changed recently where they will start to show you more cultivated tweets based on your activity. But LinkedIn did that a lot longer, whereas Twitter was more like emergency notification system level of quick. LinkedIn was more, we're going to sit back and wait a minute and show you content that you really want to see, which is why a lot of the time, when you see these posts that have, 100, 200 comments and likes and reactions, most of the time they've been posted 2 weeks ago. And it's because LinkedIn just moves a little slower. It's not as acceptable to be posting too much. Each social media platform does reward you for what you put into it. So if you're tweeting more people are going to see your stuff. If you are interacting more on LinkedIn, more people are going to see your stuff because that's how they get paid. So, but what has happened is that LinkedIn has become so boring. Oh my goodness, it's so boring. And the problem is that it's actually a really great platform. And I know, as a marketer who specializes in social media, there are plenty of problems with the platform. But honestly, part of the reason that LinkedIn is so boring is our fault. Social media in itself it was so genius because they became one of our biggest news sources, our media outlets, and they create a fraction of the content. All of the users create the content. So while it is boring now, that's okay because we can change it. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a hot second here. Because I want you to see, I'm going to need to do a presentation here to you. So I hope you can see my video. I'm going to showcase 4 types of online personas as if they were at a party. All right. I'm going to, number them out 1, 2, 3, 4, see if you can pick them out. And then we're going to go over which one is which. All right. So here's number 1. I don't like that dress. Wow, her hair needs help. Have you thought about maybe being good at your job? Number 1. Number 2. Just gonna sit over here. Nice. Number 3. Hey, I saw you started a new job. That's great. Have I told you about how great my company is? Hey, I know you were talking about dogs, but I really just wanted to take an opportunity and talk about how amazing my company is. And of course, me, because I'm associated with it. I'm great. Number 4. Hey, oh my goodness, I saw that you started a new job. How's that going? I hope it's going well. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I would love to catch up with you at some point if you have a few minutes. So don't want to hear all about the new gig, right? That's the 4. So let me start sharing again. See, while I'm doing that, see if you can pick out which one is which. I'm sure you'll definitely get the first one. We all have our fair share of those. All right. Online personas. Number 1. The troll, obviously, the troll, the hater. We know who they are. They tend to run a little bit more rampant on Twitter, but they are on LinkedIn as well. So we just, don't feed the trolls and move on. 2, the lurker. I first found out about this term actually a few years ago when I was a heavy Reddit user. And yeah, of course, the lurkers, they're the ones that tend to know everything that's going on, but you never see them online because they have 8 different sock puppet accounts and they suddenly know how everything's going on, but they don't really post a whole lot. The lurker. Number 3, the self-promoter. And I am very, very guilty of this. As a marketeer and also a big content creator, it's very easy to fall into this pattern, the self-promoter. And number 4, the winner, ding, 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 is the conversationalist. So I wanted to point these out because, and this is part of the reason I started doing dramatically reading cold sales emails, is because whenever you personify your text-based communication, sometimes, or online personas, it seems absolutely absurd. Things that you would never say in real life, we type down for some unknown reason, and it's because we just feel like we have to be more formal or whatever it may be. So kicking off the troll, number 2, number 3, and number 4 all together kind of makes up an actual human, doesn't it? You do want to lurk. You want to, know your surroundings. There are plenty of people who actually sit at parties and genuinely lurk, or they might do it for a minute, kind of, get the vibe and figure out where they need to go. The self-promoter, we talk about ourselves. We're humans. It is what it is. And sometimes we're just really excited about stuff. Go ahead, go absolutely do that. And then, of course, the conversationalist is where we obviously want to aspire to be. Not all of us have soft skills as high as others, but we all know relatively how to hold a conversation. So nothing is wrong with 2, 3, and 4. If you're number 1, then yes, it's very sad. But if you are 2, 3, and 4, or you kind of hint towards one of them, that is totally fine. But we need to start finding things from, or picking things from the other 2 aspects and bring them in together to help create a more fully fledged 3D persona, if you will. So step 1, and again, we're focusing primarily on LinkedIn. So making your profile actually human. I mentioned this before, and I'm going to hit on it again. LinkedIn is not a resume regurgitator. It really is not. And I have a screen grab of mine that I'm going to use later in the presentation for some other purpose, but you'll kind of see what I'm talking about here. Making your profile actually resemble who you are. So here are some things to look at updating. Your headline, and I'm going to harp on this a little bit. Most people, when they talk about a headline in LinkedIn, it's, Trisha A. Howard, Marketing Manager, Holistic Cyber. That's fine, but that doesn't say anything about me. It says something about what I do, but it doesn't say anything about me. And to be honest, there are tons of marketing people in cybersecurity. Who cares? Why would I want to connect with them? So finding something that it says about you and really putting that in the headline. And it's important to be in the headline because if you've ever, scrolled over somebody like in a comment or whatever, all you see is their picture, their headline, maybe their location. But having a really punchy headline, it really helps. Back to what was being said earlier about, using your marketing skills to find a nice headline. It's the same idea. And this also says a lot about you. Your summary does not equal your bio. They are two different things. Especially the one that cracks me up the most is whenever their bio is written in the third person. Again, this is a social media site. This is not like your website. And some people have their social media managed for them. And if that's your case, then that's one thing. But most of us don't, right? We manage our own stuff. So talk about yourself in the first person. And your summary, again, needs to be you. We don't need your bio because we can scroll down the page and see your work experience. We want to know who you are, right? Be a human being. If you create content at all, or you work on, lots of projects that you are able to talk about, of course, then you can feature them at the very top of your profile with featured content. And this can include anything. You can feature a website, you could feature, a video. Maybe if you were, looking to looking for a job, you can also feature your resume right at the top. Find things that will serve your purpose for what you are doing right now and who you are and how best to showcase it. Adding interests other than just corporate, and also the fifth bullet here about interesting content about you, they kind of go hand in hand. The main point here is that yes, of course, we do get on LinkedIn to talk about work and to, connect with industry professionals, but we are all people. We are not our jobs. That is not our entire identity, much to the chagrin of all of our bosses out there, I'm sure, but that's just not the truth. So finding content that you find interesting, whether it be directly related to your job, or maybe it's a hobby that you're doing or something like that. Again, it's a social media site and it's your site. I mean, you can say whatever you want to. Everybody has different lines on what they're willing to post on different social media sites, and that's up to you, of course. But just know that it is a social media site, and it is okay to post, pictures of your dog or your kids or whatever it may be. It actually makes you look like a human. Step 2. Gather intelligence. So for those of you OSINTers and social engineers out there, this is going to sound super, super familiar. And we are going to hit on the whole not going too far. So there's that. So here is an example of my headline. Just if you pop onto my profile, this is exactly what you'll see. And I've highlighted a couple of things here. And I want to break this down because there's a ton of information right here that most people who do social media for any sort of, at all, whether it's managed for them or they do it themselves, you can get a lot of information really, really quick. It takes like 5 seconds. So what you see here is, one, I've got pink hair, so that's always easy to reach out to me on. But so at Trisha Kicks SaaS obviously means some sort of social media presence, which is then backed up by the fact that I mentioned social media. So that's an easy data point. Fine arts, obviously you can take a 1 in 3 stab that they're going to either be a musician, a theater person, or an artist. So there you've got something there. Nerd, everybody has their own definition of nerd. So this actually offers a nice opportunity for you to ask a question, because questions definitely work better whenever you're meeting somebody for the first time. Again, people like to talk about themselves. Jedi, most of us know at least some sort of context behind Jedi, so you know that there's a Star Wars element there. And then ENTJ, if you're a Myers-Briggs person, you can recognize that as well. Now, I wanted to point these things out because it seems obvious, and none of what I have said or will say is earth-shatteringly brilliant. It's literally common sense, but it's things that we have created these walls between digital communication and in-person communication that don't have to exist, right? So all of this to say, this is very quick, it's very easy to find, and not a single one of those things, maybe social media a little bit, hits on my job. I didn't mention my company, didn't mention my school, because it doesn't, you're getting to know the person at this point. Step 3, find commonalities. So this is a screen grab from someone who I actually did when I was in my inside sales days, reached out to straight up cold from LinkedIn. And I was moving to New York City, and I was looking to make, big connections. And this was a CISO of a very large, very notable company here in New York. And so I sent them a message and said, hey, I used these 3 things that are right here. I said, hey, we know, so-and-so and quite a, few other connections. I noticed that we're also in a bunch of groups. I'm new to the city. I'm relatively new to the industry. And I noticed that you talked about volunteering in your profile. So I hope that you would consider mentorship volunteering, because I would really appreciate just coffee or something with you. I promise I won't take up too much of your time. And if you don't have time, I completely understand. And what's amazing about this is we have now been connected for over 3 years and are actually quite good friends. And by the way, this is a screen grab straight from LinkedIn Regular. This is not out of Premium. Premium has a ton of other options. And if you are looking to, grow your network, if you are looking to, look for a job, of course, unfortunately, that has affected a lot of us here, then I do think that making the jump into Premium, even if it's for the free month, is worth it, because you get a ton more insight than this. But I wanted to take a screen grab straight from regular LinkedIn, because this is just free stuff that LinkedIn actually pulls for you when you're looking at someone else's connections. Step 4, engage. It's not a real talk of mine if Ricky Gervais is not involved somehow. So I used engage here instead of reach out or communicate or whatever, because it really does take engagement. When we're talking about social media, I mentioned before, the big problem with the self-promoter type is they only post things about themselves. They only post things about their company. They don't actually engage with the community. And it seems super obvious, but it doesn't happen as often. I'm very guilty of this myself. But a couple of quick and dirty tips and tricks to kind of game the LinkedIn algorithm so that your content is showing up more, which means you're showing up in more searches, etc., which can be really crucial, especially if you are applying for jobs in LinkedIn, or you are trying to, grow your network of executives. Reacting to articles, LinkedIn finally grew up and caught up to the rest of them. Where they have actual reactions. If you react to it, LinkedIn weighs that more than a like, because it takes a little bit more effort for you to actually love or applaud something than it does to like it. So it does weight it a little more. And the nice thing here too is, of course, as somebody who's posting. So let's say you were targeting, and that is what it is, targeting a person who is a CISO at, X, Y, and Z company that you want to connect with. If you react curious or react insightful or whatever it may be, of course, it breaks it down into the little reactions. And I know for me, I always go click on the different ones and see who's done it. So of course, if you're one of 5 who has showed up as curious or insightful, then they're going to definitely see your name. So that's cool. This one is a big, soapbox of mine. Use LinkedIn for more than just when you're looking for a job. And it makes sense. A lot of people look at social media, especially in the tech industry, as a time suck, not a help. And I understand that aspect. The stuff that I'm talking about here takes like maximum 30 minutes a week if you wanted to do it consistently. Once you get a rhythm down, it takes a little bit to kind of figure everything out. But if you're relatively familiar with the LinkedIn platform, it doesn't take a lot of time. But when you only use it when you're looking for a job, the problem is you have to catch up to everything else. So again, LinkedIn, any social media platform, rewards you for being more active. You truly do get out what you put in a lot of cases. So if you are wanting to network preemptively, it's better to have some sort of regular cadence because otherwise the algorithm will just suppress your content. Comment with actual commentary, right? Not just like great post, great presentation, blah, blah. There's nothing wrong with that. I call them comment bots, honestly. And it's people who are just trying to increase their profile visibility. And they'll just say, oh, great job or whatever. Especially when you are networking. And especially if you're networking with executives, you want to showcase that you know what you're talking about in a polite way, of course. But you want to showcase that you know what you're talking about. So if somebody posts an article on DFIR and this is a big, focus point for you, then you have valuable insight to put down. And even if it's not necessarily valuable to the person who posted it, like if you're posting on somebody who has like 800,000 followers and they never look through their comments, it could be valuable for someone else who's in the comments. So actually put your commentary down. It does take a little bit more effort, but more than likely, if it's actually geared towards your job or something you're interested in, that could potentially help you down the line anyway. So take the time, comment on something that's good. Groups, some people have mixed feelings on groups. I think that they're good sometimes. If nothing else, some of the, information security groups have like hundreds of thousands of members. So if you're looking for a job or whatever, you can put, posts in there and get some interaction to just get your profile more noticed. LinkedIn weighs that pretty well as well. And my favorite one is the following people before requesting to connect. So a lot of people assume that, of course, LinkedIn, the goal is you want to have a bunch of connections. You want to, connect with people because then you can message them straight away. Here's the issue. A lot of security and technology executives, as all of you know, get like people reaching out to them, specifically sales and marketers, all the time. Right? They're just inundated. I mean, I can't even imagine what all of you CISOs actually have in your inbox right now because I get plenty and I'm just a manager title. So the nice thing about following is when you follow someone, it will alert the person that you are following them, but it actually shows up in their notifications. And especially if you have a very active person on social media that you're trying to get their attention, the messages are probably going to be just completely inundated. They probably don't even look at their DMs, maybe, once a month just to clean them out. They're not going to look at their connection requests because they have way too many people trying to, grow their network. So if you follow them, it shows up in their notifications and they're a lot more likely to look at that because they are using the platform and trying to engage as well. So there's that. If you do want to try and connect, of course, make sure there's a personalized message where you met them, why you want to reach out, etc. And I do have an example of that here. So I'm not going to read this to you. I have the utmost confidence that you are able to read this on your own. But anything that's in that seafoam green color is something that I specifically personalized just for as if you were reaching out to me. Now, to be honest, a lot of it could even be more green, but you notice that a lot of it is people make the big mistake of just copy and pasting, connection requests. And the problem is people don't care, right? So of course, this does take a lot of time when you're actually researching, someone and really going through all of the commonalities. I touched on it very basically here, but all the commonalities going into what groups we like. I actually set most of my meetings when I was in the sales because I used to work at the Boy Scouts, and that was an easy, quick search on LinkedIn. New York City has affiliation, mentions Boy Scouts of America in their profile, and I would say, hey, I would love to get with you and swap camp stories. and it was just personal enough that that they were like, oh, that's interesting, but it wasn't so much that it took me a lot of time. So if you're wanting to do something really, really highly personalized like this, of course, you have to pick your targets here. But when we're talking about networking, it is important to understand why you want to reach out to them, and finding things that are common, that are genuinely interesting to you, and tell them why you how you found them and why you want to talk to them. Now, a couple things on that. It is highly personal, but only use info that's easily found. Of course, security, OSINT, and social engineers, we have quite an awesome skill set there. Just be careful. I tend to only focus on what info is readily available on the platform that I am in. Now, for instance, if they have like a Twitter handle listed, I will often go to their Twitter page just because I'm more active on Twitter. So I would probably try and reach out to them there. But again, there is a line, and you'll know the line. It's common sense. Only keep it personal, but high level personal. If you noticed in the recent in the example I showed you, there wasn't a whole lot of work talk there, and the reason for that is because they're a person. I'm a person. I am trying to connect with you. I don't want to connect with, maybe my goal is, yes, I want to connect with you because I would like a job in the future, or maybe I would like to connect with you because you are a big time influencer and I would like to get my content seen, whatever it may be. But ultimately they are a person, and your number one goal at that time is to connect with them. The biggest one here is genuinity. Be genuine. It comes through so much more. I mean, you all know, you've seen them. You've seen the really crappy sales messages of, hey, you're awesome. I saw you at this talk, blah, blah, blah. That's obviously a canned message. I actually got a message from one of my friends, Mitch Parker, today, and this person had sent him a LinkedIn message inviting him to a talk that he was speaking at, and not only that, but said his actual name in it. Like, I hope you can join us to see Mitch Parker at the IT Indiana Symposium. It was hilarious. But be genuine, and again, the like putting a little bow on here, they're just humans, right? The worst that they can say is no. We all put our pants on the same way. Executives or not I mean, most of my career has been talking to, C levels, director levels and up, even as a young sprout who knew nothing about technology. It's kind of the inside sales plight, if you will. But the worst they can do is say no. And the thing is, when if you're not in sales and you're doing this for a networking perspective, they are much more likely to respond to you, because people don't generally ask. They might ask to, pick their brain or whatever, but if you can offer them some sort of value, or if they've listed, like I said, volunteering or mentorship in their profile, et cetera, really pick on those, because a lot of the time they will respond. That's it. My contact information is there. I have, you can find me on any of the social medias at Trisha Kicks SaaS. That's my personal stuff. I also manage it for Holistic Cyber. So if you're looking for more like security content, I do some funny security memes every once in a while as well. Holistic Cyber is definitely the more security focused resource. And then my email is there if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or jokes. Always looking for that. Thank you so much for letting me spout at you for however long that was.
Trisha, you said my favorite word, jokes. Let's see. Everybody knows I'm horrible with the dad jokes. Let's see, why can't you use beef stew as a password?
I don't know.
It's not stroganoff.
Oh, I knew it. Okay. Yep.
There are more, and I will save those without annoying the rest of the crowd. Thank you very, very much. That was fantastic, very informative, interesting information. I do have one question personally, and my members, or most of them, know of my passion of headshots and photography and all that. Your picture in your LinkedIn was a wonderfully caricature drawing of you. I am of the school where I want to see a professional looking image, not a selfie taken at a football game or wherever else. Where do you stand when it comes to with that social media, when it comes to LinkedIn with that profile picture?
I am a big fan of showcasing personality. So, if I think, yes, there is a place, for the whole, professional rigmarole. And I think a lot of it too depends on what industry you're in. If you're more on the traditional industries, then yeah, it probably is going to serve you to have that. I'm in the startup world and I'm also in consulting and security. So, we can kind of do whatever we want. But I personally, if I get 3 people who try and connect with me at the same time, and 2 of them are the basic like prom bros pose, and one of them is like, them holding, their dog or something like that, I will connect with the dog first, because it shows me that, again, they're a human being.
Okay, cool. No, I appreciate it. It's a good perspective. Let's see. I got a question for Patrick. Unfortunately, Patrick did have to drop off. He's out in Portland, so he's still, quote unquote, on the clock. But the question that came in was, are younger CEOs any different than older ones when it comes to risk management? Are the younger ones willing to accept risk, or vice versa? And Patrick replied, I texted him to ask. He came back and said, great question. Age can matter, but not always. Usually the older, the more reserved, less direct they can be. But this can also be deceiving. For example, you may get a mixed or even opposite body voice language from them. They may sound like they are agreeing when they're going to just say no anyway. Younger execs tend to be more direct and often give off more body language cues. As for risk acceptance, that's not so much an age thing, I found. Take a look at their past decision-making history, as much of it as you can, to see where they land on the, as he put it, conservative cowboy spectrum. So thanks to that question, Jose. Patrick's, let me see if I can kick up my, let's see if we can try this without it crashing on me again. I have Patrick's connection information. We have Trisha's. Trisha, is it possible to get a copy of your presentation I can share with the attendees?
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic. At this time, we've got some time left. So if anybody has any questions they want to ask Trisha, unmute yourself, ask away. I don't want to take all the time. So go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Really? Nobody's got any questions? Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Lots of awesome Trishas, so that's cool. Oh, Andrew's going to steal my dad joke. Okay, I see how it is. So we still got like a bunch of people online. So no questions from anybody? It was, wow. Okay.
Any good jokes?
I got plenty, but I didn't want to steal the limelight.
No, I said good jokes.
James, I'll ask a question.
Go ahead.
So I do a lot on LinkedIn. What do you think works best? We've been trying to do more videos rather than articles, and getting a little bit more personal. Do you see that works better, or do you see that articles and substance and case scenarios work better?
Are you posting the videos natively on LinkedIn, or are you posting external links?
We've done both.
Okay. So video definitely does better. Engagement's always better. People tend to be visual learners. You know what I mean? It does depend on your audience. I would say look at your look at your audience stats and see what is being clicked on and stuff the most. That'll tell you a lot. I do a lot in the analytics side, but largely video does well, and posting them natively, regardless of platform, will also do better. Content wise, because if again they want to promote content that is going to keep somebody in your platform versus going outside. It's like bringing Dunkin' into a Starbucks. You know what I mean?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What mixture of fun, informative, posts and, hey, look at my company, it's great, do you suggest?
Oh, that's a great question. So I like to do like the 2-to-1 type thing. So if you do 3 posts a week or whatever, 2 of them be informative and 1 of them being boastful. And the thing is, or I say boastful, talking about the company. The thing is, you can do them at the same time. So for instance, if like my company focuses on nation state defense for the enterprise, right? We focus on that threat. So if I see an article that's talking about, a new Chinese group or an Iranian hacking group or whatever, I can comment on that and kind of slightly plug in holistic cyber, but while also showing that I know what I'm talking about. And that's the ultimate goal. That's the art form. You know what I mean?
Do you ever write posts promoting somebody else?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's a great point. So especially if you go see a talk that has, somebody with like a large following or somebody that's very notable in your industry, definitely do a text post, a text post and then tag that person in, because then they can see it. And if they like it, then their network will see it as well. But yeah, promoting other people, it's good karma. And it shows that you're engaged to the platform, because LinkedIn or any social media site wants internal links as well.
I still have a problem paying for LinkedIn, since I was probably on LinkedIn 6 months after they launched, and I feel like they should pay me for all the content I've created.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, honestly, that's why I used to, when I started blogging and stuff, I did it solely out of LinkedIn. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to get my own domain because I want to own my own content.
And what made you come up with that domain name? I'm just curious.
Oh, Trisha Kicks Sass. I stole it actually. So we were at it was when I was in inside sales, and we were doing I don't remember what the vendor was. I think it was some UC vendor, and they were talking about kicking SaaS this summer or something like that. We had like spiff months, and if we got so many meetings, we got gift cards and all that, and they said kicking SaaS, and I was like, oh, that's really cute, and I just kind of like put it into the mental Rolodex. And when I really got into social media and I started kind of picking up on Twitter, I was like, man, I don't like, my name was not really professional at all. It, whatever. And I was like, all right, I need something that's going to be good branding wise. And it stuck.
That's cool. Somebody had a question in the chat about how do you deal with unsolicited connection requests?
Oh, I started a video series making fun of them is the real answer. But to be honest, I get a lot of them. And what I usually do is I will take 1 day a week for like an hour or something like that. And I will scroll through them. If they are obviously trying to sell me something, I delete them. If they are not at least like a 3rd degree connection, I delete them. Most of the time, second. I like to stay in 2nd degree unless they have really put in the work. Because again, I have a ton of information on my profile, and I do that intentionally because I want people to reach out to me for something that's going to be beneficial. You know what I mean? I would have loved for that when I was reaching out to people like that.
Hey, Tricia, this is Steve Molden. Real quick, the question I have kind of ties onto what you just said. How much is too much content posting to LinkedIn?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So
because you mentioned 3 times a week, and I'm like, well, I mean, I'm one of those that I can do content 2-3 times a day, maybe.
That's excellent. That is great. Yes, that is good. I personally don't think there is such a thing as too much. I know some people tend to think that way. The thing that you have to remember about it is that LinkedIn's algorithm is a little slower than something like Twitter, right? So the advantage is you don't have to share the same things over and over again, whereas on Twitter, it's completely acceptable for you to share the same article or same video or whatever 6 times because you're going to get it 6 different audiences every time.
Right.
Whereas with LinkedIn, it'll take a little while to stew. But 2-3 times a day is ideal. What I would do is if you if you want, if you really want to get into it, like Buffer, or I prefer Buffer for like, free social media manager tools. And what's nice is they will show, one, you can manage multiple profiles, which is great, but also it will show you, what times your audience is interacting with you the most, and it will auto post around those times, because LinkedIn, I think it's 30 minutes. Yeah, it's 30 minutes. If you get a certain amount of engagement within 30 minutes, then LinkedIn will prioritize your content. So if you have a post that you're really trying to get to, have like a text chain or something and be like, hey, can you go like this, or can you go comment on this or whatever? And it'll game the algorithm to put it up.
Right. Yeah, I use Fire for it too. And I had somebody else tell me a while back, we did some LinkedIn training at work. It was the post sign out. It had something to do with the algorithm as well. Just sign out completely if you're done. And for whatever algorithm kicking in, and I think Josh, thanks for the comment there, Josh. If you're live on LinkedIn every day, notifications do get and I noticed that too. So I'm like, if I'm using an app to, I don't necessarily log off.
Right.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right.
You brought up algorithms. Have you seen The Social Dilemma yet on Netflix?
I did. I loved it.
So my wife was ready to throw her phone out the window, just based on, from a privacy standpoint, children perspective. I'm just curious on your impressions of it. You said you loved it. I'm curious. Do you think they're right on? Do you think as a society we're kind of, in trouble with that kind of thing? Or do we just need to take it in moderation and be aware of that? That awareness helps us make better decisions. I was just kind of curious in your perspective.
Yeah, okay, so from a marketing perspective, I was fascinated. So I nerd out like so hard on social media analytics. I have a whole I'll have to walk with y'all on this at some point, but I go through my Twitter analytics and it's really also like seeing how my audience is and all. It's very fascinating to me. So from that angle, I thought it was really cool. The thing that did make me a little nervous was the predictive part, when they were saying, do you assume that, your phone was actually listening to you? And it turns out that it was actually just predicting your behavior. And I'm not 100% sold that that's fully true. You know what I mean? Obviously we know our devices are listening to us. That's not a tinfoil hat. That's just the truth. It has to do its job for voice recognition stuff. But it was really interesting as far as should we be worried about it? I personally love having my stuff tailored to me because it makes my life easier. If I'm working, I cover 3, 4, 5 different time zones sometimes. So, in one single day. So if I have something that makes my life even remotely easier, I'm here for it.
Very good. All right. Any other questions for Trisha?
Okay, I got a joke.
Go on.
No.
Guy goes into a doctor's office. He's got a banana up his nose, a carrot in one ear, and a cucumber in the other ear. He looks at the doctor. He says, "Doc, what's wrong with me?" The doctor looks up and says, "Well, that's simple. You're not eating right."
Oh, there you go. So,
that
carrying
was
on the
corny.
food one, Debbie, our chapter secretary, threw this one to me through in Slack, and it says, "Why can't melons get married?"
I don't know.
They can't elope.
Can't elope. Oh, I should have known that. I should have known that.
Thank you, Debbie. Good one on that one. I like that. So,
I'm a big pun person. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I'm a huge pun person.
How did the hackers get away from the FBI?
They ransomware.
Yep. There was another one I had, but escaping me from right now. All right. We got a couple minutes left. If anybody got any last minute questions for Trisha? We will have her contact information. I will send her presentation out, and Patrick's. It's got his contact information. I figure everyone's been paying attention because none of our emails working with Office 365 and Azure and all those are down and have been for the last couple of hours, which is quite scary and surprising. But we will be doing our, I should have, we're waiting on verification on our speaker for next month. And we are working on none for our presentation for November. So it's working now at least. Okay, thanks, David. Appreciate that. But again, I want to thank Patrick and thank Tricia for their fantastic presentations. Very informative, great perspectives on communicating. And I know I may have to try and tweak some of my LinkedIn stuff. So I want to, again, thank everybody for attending this evening. And stay safe out there. And we will see you next month. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
See ya. And then, Andy, we can kill the recording. Of course, it's always interesting to see who's sticking around that, you know. Hey, Andy. Oh, Christopher, we're able to still pull the list of attendees, right?
Yeah, I checked everybody in.
You got everybody?
While the meeting was going on.
Okay.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, I was using my Mac. I'm now on my Windows machine. I was using the Mac, and both Macs that I have ended up dropping the audio. I'm not sure what it was, but so I kicked over to my Windows machine and ended up being all right for the rest of the meeting. So
it's just us lurkers hanging out, Jenkins.
No, yeah. So. All right. So, Andy, you're gonna we'll get the recording from you, or we can pull it from this, right? Oh, we can stop recording. There we go.